Hey there. I would like to begin the episode by thanking Gabriel, Kyle Johnson, Gardar Brecky, Jeremy, and B. Bonk. All of these people have gone to patreon.com/Duckfeed.tv and supported this show by kicking in a couple of bucks a month. It really does help us out. And you get cool stuff in return for doing that too. Extra shows, exclusive content, things like that. Anyway, that's patreon.com/Duckfeed.tv, and thank you.
My name is Gary Butterfield.
My name is Cole Ross.
You're listening to Watch Out for Fireballs. It is a Games Club podcast.
And this week we are talking about Lords of Magic, which is a strategy game developed by Impressions Games and published by Sierra Online for the PC in 1997.
We'll be talking about the game and the individual lords.
Yeah, lots of lords up in here.
If you like lords.
Ooh,
This
boy.
game is full of lords.
What can I do to get you into a lord today?
Yeah. Do you want to be a royal? No. Be a lord. So this is an executive produced episode. This is produced by David. Thank you, David. We really appreciate you. We've got a couple David joints coming in the next year, and I'm excited about them.
Yeah.
Specifically, David requested the special edition of this, which was released in 1998, a year later, and this includes the expansions Legend of Urak. I always wanted to say Urak, but the intro proved me wrong.
It says Urak. Urak. Okay. Yes.
Urak. Long U.
Urak. Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
You dirty rack. We'll be talking about that more a little bit later. And to put a blanket caveat on this episode, which I think is probably worth it. This isn't a grand strategy game because it's turn-based.
Yeah.
But this is a strategy game with a huge scope, kind of like your Civs or your Age of Empires or what have you.
Yeah.
And it's not like, I think that I can speak for both of us in that I got this pretty late in my time with it.
Yes.
It took a long time to get.
Right. I kind of basically had to construct a flow chart of how an individual turn it needed to go. And how and to break things down kind of a little bit into the 4 different X's that you have to have, your expansion, exploitation, and stuff like that.
X-Men.
X-Men, yes. Yeah. X-Files. Yeah, all of the X's. Yeah. It took, this is, I tend to enjoy a strategy game, but I tend to be more on the management sim side of things. What happens here with Lords of Magic is it is very complicated. It's basically like a strategy and management game at every possible level of zoom.
Yes,
you can have
at multiple times.
Right.
There are huge RPG elements to this as well, like classical fantasy D&D style RPG elements, like leveling and magic items.
Yeah.
For your individual units, all the way up to diplomacy. And kind of territory management, encroaching. So it ended up being a thing. I like this genre too. I went on such a fucking roller coaster with this of this is great. I don't like this. No, I get it. I like it. Now I wish I like games that do this easier. And then I kind of came around at the end to be like, no, this is good. I have fun playing this when this is the kind of thing where if you're in the mood for this, this is super good.
Yeah.
You have to do a lot of work to understand it, and it is a very specific mood. That at least in my experience, this is a real mood. Like, I'm going to grognard it up and stay up late and one more turn, this kind of thing, like a Civ, but harder to understand initially.
Yes. Yeah. With much more micromanagement going on. Yeah. So I eventually came around on this too, but like even, up to the point where I was putting together the notes, I feel like I'm on a very uncertain footing, not just because, like this particular kind of strategy game isn't one that I have an awful lot of experience with. Like I'm more in line with like Civ, in that regard. But also like there's just a lot to this, and like, it's also it kind of defies the structure of the show just a bit, because outside of those legends of Urak, there's no real story to it. So this is going to be kind of a different episode, because like when we talk about the main game of this, we're going to be like talking through the entire loop of the mechanics for a given for a given campaign.
Yep. The closest kind of compadres to this in stuff we've done for the show would be like Heroes of Might and Magic 3 or Masters of Orion 2.
Yes.
Both of which have some similarities to this. Something I kind of unlocked this time around was that, the first time I played this, it took forever because there were a lot of deaths and a lot of false starts and like working myself into corners. Once I kind of got it, this kind of game almost has like a roguelike structure. To it, where you choose a character and a faith, which we'll talk about all that later, to give you like similar to choosing a character in Isaac, and then like a run can be like a few hours, like a couple hours, and that could be a complete playthrough of the main game, the campaign, and it is randomized to a degree. I was just like, oh, there's weird rogue DNA in this. And I never really considered that, because I associate Civilization, like I don't have as much experience with Civilization as most of my peers, even though I do like Civ. It wasn't on any computers at school, basically. So that game is something that I liked and I completed runs of, but even that never got short. Like a game of Civ was always a real long time. This is short. Like you can make this, again, 2 to 3 hours once you understand it.
Yeah. Like I got through a run with a faction with a faith that I was familiar with. Like I got through one in a day, like in a day of playing, which for me is like, 2 3 hour sessions, right? One in the morning and then one in the evening. Yeah.
My huge number of run-ups and false starts when I was first getting to know this game, and then coming back to it after that point and being like, oh yeah, like that happened. I just got to do this. Yeah. And that feeling of mastery is really satisfying. It's just this game came out in the late 90s. So like you have to earn it all. Like you basically, I read the manual cover to cover before playing this and loved doing it. And I still needed to like,
I read the
manual. It
still
took a long time.
I read the manual 2 times. I read it before, and then I played a little bit, and I realized, I didn't internalize any of this at all. Like, and then I went back to it with specific questions. No, I read it 3 times because I also went through it to make the notes.
And this game includes save files that you can load up that just demonstrate individual systems. So, like, there's a save called, like magic.lom, Lords of Magic, and you load that up. And it just gives you a scenario where, like, hey, here's some magic. Learn it. It's real fucking wild.
Yeah.
Like, it is. I would believe this game came out before it did.
Yes.
Actually, like, this feels archaic even for when it came out to me. A little bit, and we'll get into all that, but just kind of I want to set an expectation of how this episode will be different, not just in terms of structure, but also in terms of depth, because I one of the things, we don't try to like everything we do on the show by any means, but I do try to feel like I get it.
Yeah.
Like I understood Soul Reaver. People told me I didn't, but I did. I understood that game. I don't necessarily feel like I have a full understanding of Lords of Magic. I beat it twice on easy, and that's it.
Yeah.
So, I do not understand this. So this is not expertise. This is kind of, closer to like a review or kind of an explainer, like a 101 level explainer for this game.
Yeah, an explainer. The thing that I feel confident about is the way that the different levels of Zoom and the way that the different systems feed into each other, specifically with the economy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. Like, it's not like it's bad.
No.
It's just esoteric.
I like this game. It really makes me want to find something that took inspiration from this and is more modern in its interface and discoverability.
Yes. Yeah. This feels like playing a granddaddy, like a, an antecedent, playing one of the antediluvians.
If this is Wasteland 1, I want this game's Wasteland 2.
Yes. Or this game's Fallout.
Yes.
The story of this, so you play as a lord of one of the 7 elemental faiths. Eventually you can unlock the 8th one. Mm-hmm. You're in the fantasy world of Urak. And in this world, Balkoth, the Lord of Death, has taken over. Mm-hmm. And it's time to win everything back, kind of like inch by inch.
Yeah. You gotta knock him off of his fucking bat.
Yep. Knock it off of his high bat.
He rides a bat around. Yes. Yeah. And as we alluded to, this episode is going to be a little bit different because the main campaign doesn't really have a story. It has systems interacting and you bumping up against other faiths and kingdoms and stuff like that. The actual body of this episode is going to be mostly kind of composed of the systems of play. So instead of doing like a generalities and then talking about the biographical stuff here, we're going to do the biographical stuff here first to kind of talk about where this comes from, because this is in a different tradition than a lot of stuff that we usually cover.
Yeah. So Impressions, the studio that made this, this was their Ballywick. Crunchy strategy simulation games, grognardy computer.zone.
Yes.
Stuff.
Yeah. So like prior to this, their big series was Caesar, kind of historical, like, hey, manage the Roman Empire. And a number of other
origins of the dressing. Their prior dressing to this was Caesar.
Yeah.
And then the other dressing before that was Lords of the Ranch.
Like looking through their catalog, there's some interesting stuff there. Like there's one that's called Detroit, which is like a business management sim for the auto industry, like going from like making Model Ts up to like what had to have been modern day at the time. That looked pretty cool. Like a lot of these, European strategy game developers, they have a number of Civil War titles as well.
Yeah,
which is like a huge like pocket genre. Which I have like a weird amount of experience with as a youth because I had family members who like those. But the big one that they did prior to this, and this is kind of part of the same series, is Lords of the Realm.
Yes, Lords of the Realm is like the Demon Souls to this Dark Souls,
right?
Basically, like it was a precursor to this, spiritual predecessor. It was more grounded in history. This, so no magic. The first game was about medieval battles in England and Germany. So just very historically based. That first game was more focused on first game in Lords of the Realm was more focused on combat. Second game added population and city management, and then mixed in these turn-based battles with turn-based elements with real-time battles.
Yeah.
Which is what Lords of the Magic basically does.
Yes. And so Lords of Magic was the studio's kind of attempt at making this more intricate, magical version that is like explicitly based off of Lord of the Rings. Like it's actually very quaint how in the manual there's like a designer's note, which just has, it's like a letter kind of explaining the mindset that they want you to have in this, saying like, yeah, when we thought about making a more, magical, high fantasy focused thing, it's impossible to escape Lord of the Rings. Think about how exciting it would be not to be reading those books or watching like a movie of this, but to be able to live in this world and act as a ruler. And they talked about like all these little like emergent stories that could pop up because of the way these systems interact. Like I said, it's very quaint.
Yeah. And we'll talk about aesthetics later, but they really lean into that.
Yeah.
Like I played as the traditional fantasy religion in this, and it really is going for that, like 24/7 24 hours of chill tavern beats to study to. There's a lot of tavern beats that I studied to during this, and it does get across the atmosphere.
Yeah.
Which I like. But there are like emergent stories that happened in this. Like this ended up being actually a dead end, but I ended up having like a moment where I'm like, oh, like I'm kind of surrounded, and if my people leave the town, they're going to get fucking murdered. Like everybody is quartering right now, and the forces of fire are actually patrolling outside of my fucking stronghold. Like, this sucks. It was early on, so I couldn't figure out a way out of that, if there was a way out of that.
Yeah.
But it was a cool little story moment.
Yeah.
They're successful at that emergent strategy element.
Yeah. It does have a little bit of that Civ angle of like you start to develop grudges because you perceive that the computer specific, like a certain other civilization has it out for you, right? And for me, both of us, I think, really focused on order because it's the Mario of the faiths. But yeah, like fire is just an early thorn in your side there. Yeah. So yeah, a lot of bad blood there.
Your allies are fucking useless. Of course I took but yeah, and those are predetermined. So depending on your religion, you'll have different relations.
Yeah,
it is played out like a grid, or like the schools of magic in D&D.
Yes.
So there is, if you're a specialist in abjuration, you can't cast evocation or what have you. Same thing, but with fire and life. So the Legends of Urak expansion was released pretty quickly after the original story, or after the original took the strategy framework, and this added 5 campaigns that are more directed and story based and have special rules to them. These are based on myths and legends generally. And they're neat. There is in the fan community of this, there's actually like a fairly robust modding community for this game, who believes that they ran out of time because there are only 5 stories instead of 1 for each religion.
Right.
And there's a fairly robust mod that adds in a bonus story for each other faith based on the designer's notes.
Oh, cool.
So the designer at one point had advertised Legends of Urak and been like, yeah, there'll be a fire campaign or a chaos campaign where you start as a slave and you have to do an uprising, and modders have made that.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean, this again is part of a tradition of games that ships along with the tools for people to make their own stuff.
Yes.
Yeah. So Impressions is a weird studio. I was kind of shocked to see this. So at the time that this came out, it was owned by the same holding company that Blizzard was. Havas Interactive is the name of it. And in 1998, think about what a year 1998 was for Blizzard specifically, having just put out Diablo and then StarCraft as well. Impressions was actually more profitable than Blizzard was, at this point, kind of giving you an indication of how big they were, at least worldwide at that point.
Yeah, which is why if there's ever an alternate universe, like Tennant's alternate universe, where we're playing World of Lords of Magic Craft, the MMO sensation from Impressions. It's really fascinating, learning that, or when I learned that, because I really wish that the RTS parts of this were more like StarCraft.
Me too.
Blizzard did a better job with the RTS stuff for sure. After they made this, they were pretty prolific after this released, and they continued publishing games up until 2004 when they shipped Lords of the Realm 3. However, then they shuttered the studio.
Yes. So, that was a result of Sierra just fucking with them, installing new leadership that, didn't work in the favor of Lords of the Realm 3, rather. I had a typo in there. And that game kind of got a mediocre reception. It was just the studio going out with a whimper. However, alumni, leadership from Impressions, would go on to found Tilted Mill Entertainment, who continued Caesar, and then also did Immortal Cities, Children of the Nile, which started a small little Egypt historical sim kind of series for them. And then also Firefly Studios, which makes games in the Stronghold series. There's so fucking many of these. Basically, going and doing research for this game was a huge flashback to spending time in Babbage's and Software, etc. Every single box, I was like, oh yeah, I saw that. These were all over the place. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Absolutely, and this is one of those games and one of those genres where there are people who play video games and this is what they do.
Yeah.
They just do this, and I respect it.
Yep.
So this is, as we mentioned, this is pretty ambitious. There are a lot of locking systems. You wouldn't know it necessarily to look at it, though, because if you take a look at it, like, I think this has a charm to it, but it's dorky. Like, it's even that, the chill lo-fi taverns to adventure to music, and then also just little tiny pixelated knights going around going, "Yes, sir. For the realm,"
it's the same. Like that. It's the same bark every time. Yes, sir. Yeah. Clop, 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 as they as they like jitter across the screen. Yeah,
it's fire. Crossbows ready. Like it is very, very dorky from an audiovisual standpoint. Yeah, in a way that has some charm.
Mm-hmm. And also, this is just an awkward time for PC games in general. Like they couldn't really do an awful lot of, any real 3D at this point, and have it be as intricate as it needed to be. But they were trying to approximate like the look of something 3D. So everything kind of has that Donkey Kong Country, like we rendered a model and then we made sprites out of different poses that go there.
Yeah.
And the thing that really suffers is actually like the real-time strategy portion, where like the motion of the individual sprites is incredibly jittery and actually hard to read, especially when they get jumbled up on each other.
Well, yeah, and the perspective doesn't help.
Right.
Like they overlap in a way that can make any kind of precision during those points really difficult. And we'll talk about that. Like that's, if I had to choose like an issue with the game, I feel like the fun and kind of capacity for control and tactics during the RTS part is probably the biggest flaw.
Yeah,
to me of this game, once I got over the hump. Like all the macro stuff I thought was pretty good.
Yeah.
And really fun. But inside battles, like it would never really kind of got smooth for me. That hump that you had to get over is largely due to the interface.
Yeah.
Which is, there are a lot of buttons in this game and there are a lot of little symbols, so like, what's the flag? What's the three men staying together? What's the one man standing?
Yeah.
What arrow?
Some of them get tooltips. Some of them don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's tricky. You're given this HUD kind of like immediately, this little, user interface, and it is really, really hard to understand what it is. And there were things I discovered shockingly late.
Yes.
Like being able to check my diplomatic relations while I was waiting for other players to take their turn. And I was like, oh,
yeah.
Goodness. I discovered that like Friday.
Yeah.
Like we're recording this on Monday. Like, and I've been hammering away at this for a while because I wanted to get ahead.
Yeah.
So
it's a spicy one. Yeah. No, it took me a while. Like I discovered the party roster on accident, like the one that shows you like just a big list of every active party that you have. Like, like that would have been cool to have, because like to check my status and everything, I was just like cycling through them, like using the little focus buttons on the bottom. So like this, I think, it extends beyond just an aesthetic quibble, because this very dense interface that like legit requires the single sheet printouts, basically the legends that you can get off of GOG when you buy this game to like help you decipher it and remember like what means what, because like on your individual like lords or champions, like you have full stats. You have strength and all that
like these
stuff.
Are characters.
Yes. And you want to be able to read that character sheet to like understand, maybe how they're going to fare against what you're going to be going up against. So, this is already a very intricate game, pretty punishing, especially early on. The game does not want you to, break into a point where things can kind of get self-sustaining. The lack of discoverability does kind of, again, just add a lot of friction to this that some people live for. But if you are, kind of coming in as a dabbler, it's going to be a tough hump to get over.
Yeah. Pretty difficult. There are a lot of things too that I feel like have to be solved now. So for example, like there is a weird dearth of drag and drop in this, which would have been huge. Like even taking down, so you control your army in sets of kind of lord led little units that you put together. Managing those is a huge pain in the dick.
Yep.
I would like this, this unit, this to be this guy, and this guy, and this other one over here to be the rest. That's hard and it sucks.
Yeah.
And just being able to pull up that unit view and then just easily drag them from there would have done it. Or having somebody like really early on, I recruited 2 scouts and I couldn't separate them. And I kept trying, and eventually, like, you click on them you can't click them on the screen. You have to click on them during a certain panel to select them to move them apart. And it's weird. It's counterintuitive.
Yeah. And like what it led to was like, I basically like learned this game. Like I learned, like an Adobe program or something like that, where I would just kind of like get the basics, then get into situations where it's like, shit, I really need to know how to do X. And then you go to a resource and you look and see how you accomplish that. The problem with low discoverability in the interface is that you might not even know that X is a problem or X is something that you want to accomplish, right?
You might not know it's possible.
You might just think that's just the way the game is.
Yeah. Yep. I ended up doing a lot of Googling, like, how do I do this?
Yeah.
Early on, you choose a faith and a character class for your lord, which we'll talk about. But probably the biggest decision to make is your faith.
Right.
These are arranged on this little Stonehenge screen that reminded me a lot
Sacrifice.
of Sacrifice.
Yep.
Yeah, Sacrifice right in the beginning. And you can't select death yet. You have to beat the game once to choose death. Death is the evil race, obviously, and they're very powerful. I did not do a death run. I wanted to poke at it, but I just didn't. Did not have enough time. There are 8 faiths total, and they all have different interactions with each other and different strengths and weaknesses.
Yes. So every faith has an opposite. These broadly make sense. Life opposes death, order opposes chaos, etc. Just kind of standard elemental rock, paper, scissors kind of stuff. And broadly, there are 4 good faiths and 4 evil faiths. And this kind of determines whether they're going to be like, neutral friendly, neutral hostile, or like outright hostile or outright friendly.
Yes.
Yeah.
The map is really interesting in this. The map is, in terms of region, is static.
Yep.
So each faith has control of a specific region. Within that region, though, the individual buildings, their levels, and what monsters in them is randomized to a degree. So if you start as Order, which I did, I knew where fire was in relation to me, like where my closest enemies were after a time. But in terms of like what buildings were around me for capturing resources or leveling up my troops, that was different. And their layout.
Right.
So it's kind of like, again, that's a really interesting choice. Like it adds a little bit to that roguelike flair.
Yeah. Yeah. But like knowing the map and knowing who your neighbors are is a huge factor in picking which of the faiths you want to take, because it really does shape your early and mid game. Obviously, by the end game you're expanding, and a lot of that kind of flattens as you encroach on the death territory. But at the start, just some faiths just have it harder off than others.
Yes.
Yeah.
Faiths have terrain advantages. So if you're a fire faith, if you're walking around on lava, you're good. Death, it's swamps, etc. The game gives you this in a tooltip. This is somewhere where I think the graphics kind of let down.
Yeah.
I wanted these just to be big tiles with the word on them or something.
Right.
Knowing the demarcation lines of this was difficult to me.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about the faiths broadly. I have not played all of these. Unfortunately, there's a lot of them. And, I kind of just wanted to pick one and learn it so I could be able to talk. I did Order as well. I also dabbled around with Life and Fire a little bit. But yeah, we can talk about kind of broadly what each of these represent and what their strengths and weaknesses are.
Yeah. So first up, Life. These are your light elves. So these are nature. Each faith also has magic units that you can get. So these guys get dryads and unicorns. They are opposite to death, of course. And these are your ranged and flying. So this is kind of like shock troops, like, high mobility, high damage at range, low damage up front.
Right.
And very fragile.
very fragile generally. This was actually a pretty good faith to play for like combat early on, which is weird. Like I would assume life would be more of like a support thing. That's more Water's deal. I never got their legendary unit. Like in the end game of this, as you upgrade everything, you can get like, a beast, like a special unique beast. For life, it is the Phoenix, which you can use. And this, like, it replaces a whole party when you are moving around and doing in combat.
Yeah. Yeah, these are big deals. You're going to want them for the end. Think Warcraft, like your water elementals or whatever.
Yes.
So when you're making your encroachment into the end boss, which is is always death during the main game, you want to. It's good to be up at this point.
Yes,
at least.
Yeah. But you start next to fire and air, both of whom are neutral to you. Like this is a good this is a good newbie kind of one. I had a good success. It was tougher for me to set up an economy with them than it was with order.
Yeah. Yep. And we should say, in addition to having these different strengths and weaknesses mechanically, these are all different aesthetically. You have a different background track. Each faith has its own music, both in battle and out of battle, and a color scheme and their own like coded buildings. So while the things you're clearing for order are outposts, the things you're clearing for life are like hamlets. Little tree houses and stuff. So there's a really, even just aside from stats, there's a hugely unique flavor to all these, giving this like a lot of replay value.
Yeah. Yeah. So like, with life, you have those little hamlets. With Earth, like you're clearing out little like mushroom villages and stuff. Because Earth is Earth is like the dwarves, gnomes, and hobbits. Yeah.
Yep. True. Short boys.
Yeah.
They're opposite air. And their whole thing is melee. They're the strongest melee fighters in the game, but they're very slow. They can create these fast travel gates to go between their great temples. We'll talk about great temples at length. But to kind of make up for the fact that they're slow. Their range is also bad. It's not the worst.
Right.
So.
Yeah. It's just it's not their emphasis. I love that their legendary unit is a giant earthworm. Yeah, I saw one of these like yep. I saw one of these on the map and I was like, I really enjoy that. I don't know if I feel like that is a good legendary beast. Yeah. I have no idea what its capabilities are. But yeah, these start kind of between order and chaos, and they're initially on good terms with death, but that is going to turn basically any of the evil ones that are on good terms with death will turn on you. Regardless of what you do.
Yep. Air, I did not fuck around with very much. This is storm giants and fairies, and largely flying units. Flying is very powerful.
Yeah.
In this, specifically for scouting. But these are much more fragile.
Yeah.
Even, as fragile as life, and in some cases more fragile depending on the unit. These are the opposite of Earth. And they get ice drakes and a storm dragon for their legendary units, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Powerful flying units.
And they start near order and chaos. You can become really good buds with these guys as order. But yeah, like the fact that they have flying, the most flying units, like that is an advantage for them, but that feels very specific to me. And is much more limited. Like with life, your units are fragile, but you have like really good range capabilities. There's nothing that I saw here that was especially good at attacking. So
no, flying is weird. To me, it was only good for the like overland stuff. Really good for that. But in battle, not particularly useful. These guys end up making really good allies, but not like these are good bridesmaids. But you wouldn't want to marry them.
Nope. No. You want to put them in an ugly dress. Yeah,
put them in an ugly dress and, hang out with them, dance with them.
Yeah.
But don't take them home. Like, I don't know. I don't know anything about weddings.
Don't take them
home. Fire, my enemy. These are fire giants and fire dwarves.
Yeah.
So these guys are jerks. These guys are like really like shock troopers, even not even stick and move, but just in terms of really high offense and not very high defense.
Right.
So really, really powerful offensive magic, but very little in the way of support or healing or anything. Which means that they will, even when you take them out, because you're playing the long game, they will kill people.
Yes.
This guy's one-shotted some lords of mine.
Yeah.
didn't like it.
No, you really have to be careful how you approach them. God, those the fire giant mages, man.
Yeah. Really, really, the way fireballs work in this game where they hang out on the screen is really fucking weird and counterintuitive and ended up resulting in me doing a lot of reloads.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So I tried to play as these guys, but they are so heavily offensively focused that I had a lot of trouble with survivability. Like whenever something dies, it's a pretty big deal because you lose the experience that they had. And also like you need to go and make the investment again to train them,
Yeah.
So
and we'll talk about that. That is something that is slower paced than one might expect.
Yes.
Like that takes a long time.
Yeah. Fire is opposite of water. And they do get the fire drake as their legendary. That is their only flying unit. So that is a disadvantage for them, specifically in the end game. We'll talk about that. But you start near order and make their life hell, and then also you're near chaos, and you're buds with them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Water is real weird.
Mm-hmm.
This felt like the challenge mode.
Yeah.
To me, these are like Amazons and lizard men, and they are the seafaring race. They have really, really strong water units.
Yes.
They have the best scout, which is a seagull, which flies and is fast.
Mm-hmm.
And they have really good support mages, but melee and range, like direct attacking, is pretty weak.
Yeah.
But the biggest kind of like oopsie doodle to these guys is that their legendary creatures are aquatic. So depending on where you're having a fight, I could probably fight a kraken on dry land, like just me, Gary Butterfield.
Yeah,
like if it's just struggling to breathe.
It's just a waiting game at that point. Yeah,
yeah, I'm just gonna hang out. Like I'm gonna go grab a coffee.
Yeah,
I'll be back when just to kick you for your last hit point.
Right.
Just slowly deflating and suffocating.
It's just turning into a blobfish. Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't do any naval combat at all, Gary. I had no reason to engage with it.
Me either. It felt very like underbaked as part of it. Like I understand, and that's something that I think is actually true of most RTSs as well.
Yeah.
Tides of Chaos, like when you play Warcraft 2, the ship maps were annoying. Like adding that extra, traversal element tends to be pretty obnoxious to me.
Yeah. Yeah, the naval combat in strategy games like this feels like whichever Sims expansion where they add basements.
Yeah,
like in any of those games, like, oh, we'll give you basements now. Like, oh, this sucks. Okay, cool. I guess I'm not going to do this.
I'm way into Sims basements just because I want to be able to make a basement.
Yes,
because I love living in a basement.
Yeah. But yeah, you've got those legendary beasts, cannot go on land. You start near order in life and you're on good terms with them. Like a little bit of the gamble that you have here though, is that, you are the good faith who starts closest to death as the crow flies. But a sea separates you. So like you could go in that direction with your aquatic guys, but they will roll you if you get there. And death, specifically with Balkoth, has a big advantage because they have a lot of flying units to them. So like if you piss them off, they can just cross over and there's nothing stopping them.
Yeah, yeah. And there's not like you can see kind of how they attempt to balance it. Being close to two allies, like I don't think you're meant to solo this at all. I feel like you're just meant to go make good friends with order and life, like immediately. Like it's almost like a diplomatic race, but the game doesn't have stats for diplomacy.
Right.
It just kind of has values. So this feels a little unbalanced. Like if this had a bonus when bartering or something, that would actually, I think, balance this out a little bit better. Order are my boys. These are people I played because they were the Mario. These are humans. They're themed after Arthurian knights. Their Legends of Urak chapter is about the sword and stone and shit. Their strong unit is the cavalry, which is, cavalry's good. But everything else is pretty good.
Yeah.
And that's really what did it for me. Nothing sucks in this army.
Specifically, they're durable. Like an enemy getting at my crossbowmen wasn't the end of the world. Like it was when I tried doing anything with like, even with like life, right?
Yeah.
Which they're good. Like their range units are good, but you're counting on taking an enemy out before they get to them. Like the fact that this is balanced and, you know, balance brings durability is a huge thing in the favor of order.
Well, it also made, for me, it made me make, it made the RTS elements make a sense.
Yeah.
In a way they didn't with the other units early on, because I could put my footmen between the enemy and my crossbowmen.
Yeah.
And that worked 9 times out of 10. You know, when we describe the RTS elements, like it's not that much deeper than that. Like they're just flat maps, you know, where you start on opposite sides of them. So it's not like there's tons of strategy involved in those, but this allowed me to engage in what there was.
Yes. Their scout is not really that great. You just get a hound who you can send out. You know, no real advantage there.
Yeah, he's cheap. They are opposite chaos, of course. Legendary creatures they get are Spectral Knights and Lancelot of the Lake, which is very specific.
Yep. Hi, I'm a creature. My name's Lancelot.
I'm the creature Lancelot.
I'm your best friend. Then your enemy. Yeah.
And they start in the center of the map, which is a pretty big disadvantage.
Yeah.
So they're near air, water, earth, and fire. Fire will be very hostile, so they're going to be your enemies. You can make good friends with air. Earth ended up not liking me very much either.
Yeah.
By the end, but I did end up being friends with air and water. So.
Yeah. I tended to, like, I managed to keep things okay with earth, mostly through trade. Basically any artifacts that I had that I couldn't use, really, I passed their way when I encountered one of their parties, just to keep them from harrying me.
I ended up using that to get stronger relations, and I don't know if that was necessarily like the right thing to do. But I like that there is that use for artifacts that you can't use though.
Yes. Chaos looks like a really interesting faith to me, actually. So this is like barbarians and like Mordor monsters. So this is where you get like your ogres and your goblins and stuff like that. It's weird because goblins are neutral. Like you run into goblins everywhere. This is where you get like, it's like, you'd think goblins would be more included in this. This is like orcs. It's weird. There's a weird taxonomy to it because there are neutral units. There are like creep units that have already taken over the map, and marauders and stuff. And a lot of times these were just like goblins. I go into and I was like, oh shit, chaos is about. But it wasn't chaos. They were just unaligned, unincorporated goblins. Those unincorporated goblins down by the airport. You know? I just revealed the prejudice. I assumed that anything associated with chaos would be ugly. You know, there's all the ugly races. Yeah.
So,
but yeah, like these are very strong and fast melee units, but they basically have no ranged capability.
they're the worst ranged people by far.
Yeah. And their mages are unreliable. So like their spells will backfire. There's like a little bit of a chaos magic kind of element to that.
Yep. Obviously opposite order, and they start near air and earth, which is really clever map design because they're unlikely to run into order, but order is very likely to ally with air. And then you have chaos right there at the gates. Yeah. So that was a nice little, again, emergent kind of thing that shaped the flow of my play.
Yeah. I really would not want to fight air as chaos, specifically because of the lack of range. I think that chaos is really meant to align with earth very early.
Finally, death. Death are dark elves and necromancers. This is the big bad of the game. And their opposite is life, obviously. And they're very strong. They start off, you can spot check everyone's military strength, and they start off like halfway up the meter. Yeah. Right from the beginning, like this, since they are the boss.
They're already established very early on. Yeah. But their basic soldiers are all really hefty, and they've got Balkoth running around, who, I mean, it's the final boss of the game. Like, he is meant to be as much of a bastard as possible. And like, it feels like having him at your disposal makes it into like a little bit of a, almost like an ultimate gravity gun kind of moment for this. We're just like, okay, you've beat the game. Now start a new game plus as death and just go and roll everybody.
Yeah. We're playing more, harder difficulty settings.
Yeah.
Like, I did play this twice on easy, which was not easy.
No, not at all.
But if you want to play death, you can probably get it more balanced by upping the difficulty.
Yeah.
what seems like it's going to be a hugely important choice initially is selecting your lord, but you will very quickly gain access to the other classes.
Right.
But this is important because this is your avatar. So you choose your religion and your character class. And if you have no more lords left, you lose the game.
Right.
So if your lord dies and you don't have a backup lord, you're done.
Yeah. You get backup lords by allying with other places, and they give you an heir, basically. Which is, just how you can extend your dynasty and all of that. But yeah, you're picking a class, and each class's kind of capabilities and, starting attributes are going to be determined by your faith. So like some mages, like if you play as heir, you get you get a flying mage, which is a huge deal. Things like that. But broadly, 3 classes here: warrior, mage, and thief. Warrior is mostly only useful in combat. Very strong melee, and they have the ability to rally troops, so you can do like just a buff for anybody who's around you, which is good. But they're not going to do an awful lot on the overland map. The other 2 have more on the overworld map that they can do.
Yeah. My first playthrough I did warrior. My second playthrough I did a mage.
Yeah.
Mages can learn and cast spells in combat and on the map, weak in actual melee, though. The magic system in this game is slow and ponderous. We'll talk about it. So this is, a faithful execution of the D&D like linear warriors, quadratic wizards.
Right.
These will ultimately be incredibly powerful, but it takes a big investment.
Right.
To get these guys up to snuff. And then something I didn't spend very much time with, even with the one I got for free, is the thief class.
Yeah.
Which these things are wild. They allow you to do a lot of weird shit.
A lot of really important stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of, sneaking around and scouting, but also how you gather intelligence.
Yeah. Like calling this a thief feels like a misnomer. I think that they called it a thief to stick with the D&D conventions. The more accurate thing to call this would be like a spy or like a special agent or something like that.
Well, they're also really strong range units.
Yes.
Like if you do like a life thief, like you have this like amazing super long range archer. That you start with, like they're rangers as well. Like ranger might be a good, because that includes some spying.
Yeah. Yep. If I do this again, I would definitely roll as a thief.
Yeah, it's neat. Like it's pretty interesting. So we're going to kind of talk about, these systems as we run into them, starting with the early game. You get a little text scroll that tells you the premise of the video game, and you start outside of your faith's kingdom with this tiny adventuring party. They have little or no upkeep. Upkeep is a thing in this, but you just have your lord, and this is, you have nothing.
Yep.
This game starts prior to when most video games would start that have like a kingdom management. Like you have to earn your kingdom and then manage it.
The way that this felt, it's a little bit like starting this game is like beginning your life as a baby turtle. Like they really do not want you to make it from the beach to the sea. It is such an uphill climb that the early game feels like a completely different game compared to the late game.
Yeah, save often. And really, so you have no buildings. You cannot get new units easily. You can, but you have to go find the town, and we'll talk about paying for them, mercenaries versus followers. You have an early goal to reclaim your faith's great temple. What that's going to do is convert the city to your cause and allow you to start developing an economy. The tricky part of that is a tough dungeon.
Yep.
So you don't want to you might be able to beat that right off the bat, but really you want to level up a little bit and maybe hire some mercenaries.
Yes.
And the way you do that is by clearing some buildings.
Yeah. So you're commanding your party around. Each individual party can have, a lord or a champion at the lead, and then 3 standard units that are kind of packed in there. The majority of the standard units that you can get actually come stacked. So like if you have 1 crossbowman in your party, that actually means you have 3 of them at your disposal. And if any of them die, like if there are any of them left, at the end of a battle, healing will replenish that. So
they'll butt off into new crossbowmen.
Yep.
Yeah, they'll tag in their friends from high school.
Yeah, they will quicken. Their eyes will glow, and then a new one will crawl out of their mouth as their jaw unhinges. Yeah.
Yeah, while they're sleeping, while they're resting in an outpost.
Yep. Oh man. Yeah. But you can you can basically, like, at the end of this, you can have like 3 parties going around at once, like in a unit that you can take into battle. Battles can get pretty crowded.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So there's kind of 2 modes that the game operates on. We're starting off in this world map where there's a very aggressive fog of war, and things are turn-based. So your parties move. You have a certain movement range for a turn, which is a turn by your stats and the terrain. You can cast spells to augment this. The fog of war is really intense. It's called the Shroud in this, and you cannot see very far.
No.
It's also affected by topography, so you cannot see past hills or mountains. The idea here is to encourage the scouting game. Scouting is actually really important.
Yeah. And I eventually just like started making either scout units, and then like later on anything that would have stealth capabilities, and like posting them up on hills. Doing like detect thief and stuff like that. That ended up being kind of a pretty good use of my resources there. Yeah.
Yep.
But man, it makes finding your capital at the start just a little bit hairy, because you can only see a couple of spaces around you. Unless you know for damn sure which direction you need to go, you might be wasting turns. And there's a real, like, FOMO is the wrong word for it, but like, I don't know, if you don't capture your great temple until day 10 and everybody else captures their great temple on day 4, that's a problem for you.
It's interesting, right? Because it's not FOMO, it's that thing that strategy games do. And I don't know what the word is for it, but we talked about it a lot in the show, which is not knowing you're screwed when you're screwed.
Yes.
And to me, my first playthrough, like, I did not get the Great Temple until pretty late. And that wasn't ultimately what sunk me, but there is an element of like emergent kind of randomness to this.
Yeah.
So in other playthroughs that I attempted, it did sink me. The other unit just got a heads up on me. So there is an RNG element to it, to not knowing you're screwed. So basically I'm saying you don't know from many angles.
Right.
You don't know because you might not be, and you don't know because you don't know what you're missing.
Yes.
Either.
Yeah. Just a constant low level fear that, like, I feel pretty good because, if I was playing Civ, I feel good because I'm rolling around with cavalry and cannons, and my first contact with an enemy comes with them in, like, jets and bombers and stuff like that. Like, damn it, we're at different epochs. Fuck.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's always something that kind of puts me off the genre as well, because I really like that slow build development. Yeah. Kind of thing. Like, anytime I have to Zerg rush in a strategy game, I'm pretty bummed out.
Yeah.
And for this game's credit, you are rewarded for care, because, keeping your first group of units alive, they will be absolute powerhouses in terms of experience, and also will be imparting that, my lord was imparting so much experience onto my new troops that it ended up, being very careful in the beginning paid off. Yeah. It was just a very slow payoff.
Yeah. You're waiting for dividends. You're not getting like a big, like, 10x return, Yeah.
I'm getting 1 penny doubled every day.
Right.
Instead of $1,000 or whatever.
Yeah. But yeah, you've got those scouts. Scouts are pretty good, especially early on. We're going to talk about followers, but scouts do not require followers. And that is the one resource that you do not have any of at this point.
Yeah.
And also they're relatively cheap in terms of some of the other ones. And, in terms of some of the other resources, but you want to, you can get that pretty quick there after you have made all your possible moves, which will happen pretty quick in the early game. You click on a little gem in the lower right to end the turn, which is also the day. And then everybody else will get to take their turn, before it comes back around to you.
Yep. And you get to, during this time is when you can kind of plan.
Yeah.
You only have access to a handful of research or resources here, and you cannot get more without fighting. You can go into the town and go into these unit producing buildings, and you can hire mercenaries.
Yeah.
There are two different types of units you get in this game. Mercenaries, which have a low upfront cost, and they don't require a follower, but they have a high per day maintenance cost. These are actually very useful for short-term engagements. Cost a little bit. I need to beef up my army to take back my Great Temple. I need to beef up my army to make this incursion.
Yeah.
Then I'm going to fire these idiots.
For me, this was a way to get to get forces to shore up holes in my parties that I did not care if they died. In fact, if they died, that was actually pretty good for me. Yep.
Yeah, fuck a mercenary. Yeah. Like Blackwater can go to hell. Like
no, I didn't care about it I didn't care about it for morality reasons. I was just like, okay, like, yeah, I didn't have to. I didn't have to go. Right. Yeah.
I think that's probably why a lot of people who hire mercenaries don't mind if they die.
Yeah, true.
So that is the only thing you can hire at this point until you get followers. The other way you get resources is by clearing buildings and kind of caves and stuff around you. Once you click on it, you get some information, the average level of the encounter, and then kind of a description of what's going on that's mostly flavor.
Yes.
You can usually retreat. So if you don't want to do this, you can enter, and then you get into combat, which we'll talk about, and then you can auto-calc, which makes the combat happen automatically.
Yeah. I love the auto-calc.
Yeah, it's very useful. We'll get into that.
Yeah.
And you basically do that until you've leveled up enough or got enough money to buy some mercenaries so you can clear your Great Temple.
Right. Yeah. But now, as we are going in, clearing out those little structures is a good time to talk about combat, kind of the highest level of zoom that we get, where this becomes a different genre of game. Because this is real time with pause.
Yep. RTS with real time with pause. You control groups of units by dragging rectangles around them, similar to a Warcraft, or you can click on them and do individual commands. This is where you want to have your melee and range units and kind of straighten them out. Melee units charge, range units hang back. And then within these, this kind of level of zoom, there's even more individual options for your characters. You have attack option, which is basic, but then you have defend and berserk. Defend sacrifices attack for additional defense, and berserk does the opposite.
Right.
So you can kind of go all in, and this is useful.
Yeah.
If you're sending in a group, send them in defending. There's no reason not to. They're not attacking yet. And this will save the lives of your units. Like, this level of micromanagement is kind of a pain in the dick, but it is really efficacious.
Yeah. So like, you want to close the distance while defending. You can actually like click defend and then click on the unit itself to do like a parry, which it's kind of like turtling a little bit. And then when you get into the position, as you make the engagement, that's when you open up and start taking them out, dealing with the enemies. The thing that like really like killed me more than anything was the game's pathing decisions, where I would order attacks and everything would just kind of end up in this big scrum in the middle of the map. So like, you really need to like pull the reins on these guys in order to keep them in any kind of formation that will protect your more vulnerable units.
Yeah, it's a big pain.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't work super good.
Yeah.
Your range units will you can just tell them to fire, which they'll miss a goodly amount of time, or they can do aimed shots, which lowers their fire rate but increases their accuracy.
Right.
And then mages can cast spells. There's a wide variety of spells. Each faith has its own set of spells. We cannot speak to all the spells.
There's like 180 of them or something like that. Yeah.
Yep. So many spells. And they have a mana pool.
Right. Yeah. Lords and champions, kind of interchangeable, at least for the purposes here. They have their own special abilities. These are often support related. We talked a little bit about that. Like, if you have a warrior, you can do the rally, which will give a small little boost. But yeah, you're going to want to, at the very least, like, protect those people while still also using their special abilities to get whatever edge they can give you.
Yeah. And there's a little bit of risk reward when you play as a warrior. Like it is the most straightforward, but they are going to be in the thick of it.
Yes.
And again, you die.
Yeah.
If they die. These are hard. Not always. Like sometimes, you go into a level 1 dungeon and it's 2 goblins and like, who gives a shit? But sometimes, it's like, oh, there are some wolf riders in here. This isn't nothing. Or anytime there's an enemy caster, that's an emergency. The battles move really quickly here, and because they're so chaotic, it feels like you can go from winning to losing basically in no time.
Yeah.
There's also levels of depth to these. Some dungeons have 1 level, and some of them have multiple levels. So to clear them, you actually have to do 2 maps in a row without healing in between.
If you auto-calc those, you can actually heal in between.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. We got to talk about that auto-calc.
Yeah. There are a couple of tactics that you can make use of here. Like these are outlined in the manual. It has to do with basically your position and how many enemies are attacking. So like ganging up is a really huge deal. If an enemy is being attacked by a lot of people around them, they cannot attack in turn. So you can basically like stun lock them. And this goes in addition to like flanking or rear attacking, which will get around their defenses. And you're doing all of that while also keeping an eye on the lay of the land. Like there is high ground in this, and you never want to fire into high ground. Yeah.
Even though it is pretty rare inside buildings.
Yes.
There'll be like sometimes there are things that are deceptive. Like there is a fountain that has a 3D effect to it, but it is not high ground.
Right.
It's just, you just walk over it like it's a fountain painted on the ground. Like an art installation or a very, very weird gambit from Roadrunner.
Right. Yeah. No, it's not an actual fountain. We just trampolied it onto the ground.
Yeah. Super strange.
Yeah.
So combat is tough, as we mentioned. And the further you get from your home capital, the harder it is, and there are more encounters.
Yeah.
However, early on, there is auto-calc. This lets the game simulate the battle for you. So you just get right to the results. It gives you your spoils and your death tolls. The AI will do a worse job than you will.
Yes.
In this fight. So you do this when it is a stop. You do this when you have level 2s and 3s and you're going into a level 1 dungeon. And this is a time-saving measure. This is never the correct choice tactically. This is often the correct choice for sanity.
Yeah. For like, I really like, I've got a goal that I'm working on right here, and it like kind of requires me to have a place for me to garrison these units for them to heal. So like, I'm going to, instead of taking the 10 minutes that it would take to clear this, I'm going to hit this button, and we're just going to see how it comes out.
Yep. And you save before you go into battles anyway. This is a 90s PC game. Your save discipline should be, absolutely on point.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's part of the game. Save, before you do this. But it's really nice. And this ended up unlocking a big part of the flow of the game to me. Was realizing I didn't have to actually do all these kind of shitty RTS battles every single time.
Yeah.
Because they're not great. You get spoils. These include resources. This is going to be your main source of resources for the early game, as well as artifacts, which are magic items. There's a wide variety of these that can be equipped onto lords and champions, and they provide passive bonuses, or they can be like Ring of the Ram. Like they can be magic items. I got a ring that had like random effects, including status effects and shit. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, man! Like this is complicated. These can be faith specific. Yeah. So you want to hold on to these for trading goods in case you can't use them.
Yeah. It took me a shockingly long amount of time to figure out how to actually equip and use these.
Yep. It does not really tell you.
Nope. You can also get potions and scrolls this way. Potions are very important for kind of like maintaining longer military campaigns, like pushing into enemy territory. Because you want to be able to recover from battles without needing to take 4 or 5 days resting, possibly with enemy units around you. Yeah,
healing is a huge commitment.
Yes, because after battle, if you've taken any kind of damage, you have to rest, and that means not moving. You can't heal on the march.
Yep. You heal more if you stay inside than if you're outside. So it actually works out really well. After you take a fortress, you rest there for a night. But that does play with that, like feeling like you're wasting turns.
Yeah.
Eventually you will have enough units where there's always something to do. You can have, one of your armies resting while another one goes and continues the war. But early on, it's a lot of downtime.
Yeah. And later on, it's like a leapfrog kind of thing almost.
Yeah. If you want to bypass this, you can heal in the town using crystals, which are one of your resources. We'll talk about resources in a moment. But this is expensive. It still ends up being worth it, but this ended up being more of a desperation move.
Yeah.
For me.
Yeah. Those crystals should be used for other stuff. you know.
Summoning, I want to summon gargoyles and shit.
Yeah. So I didn't really do naval combat. That also kind of factors in here. I apologize for not being able to speak to that.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
So it's unnecessary. It feels very vestigial.
Yes. But once you clear the Great Temple, you get to the mid game where you can actually like start building your economy. And building your economy is where I'm a Viking, Gary.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun, and it's actually pretty clever. There's like some clever systems going on in this. Your capital becomes a stronghold, so it becomes its own kind of building that you can then level up. But inside the town, once you click on that, you get to another level of zoom where you see all of the buildings in your town. These allow you to do a couple of things with them. They allow you to make exchanges for your common resources, which are gold, beer, crystals, and fame. Here, those are the common ones, but you also gain the ability to get followers, which you allocate and also spend.
Yes.
And I love the fame system in this. I think fame is really interesting. So every week you get new followers. So there's like a payday, and depending on your fame, you get bonus followers.
Right.
Fame is a resource you can trade for. In town. It's also a resource certain buildings you capture will generate. And if you do well in battle, you get more fame.
Yes.
So you can up your fame. Like if I had a excess of some resource and day 7 was coming around, I would go get some fame.
Yeah. And you can you can do a trade chain to actually like launder resources that you have excess of, that you have surplus of to get the fame. So like, basically having any resource in the bank doesn't necessarily work to your benefit, because any of those resources that you can bank, you're not going to be bottlenecked on that, most likely.
Yeah. And fame is huge because it gives you followers. Followers are going to produce everything. So it's a growth resource. Like it is throttles the degree, the speed at which you get faster and better.
Yes.
By using those followers you assign them to buildings, so they make passive resource income. You have an upkeep every turn, so your army has a certain minus, your income is a certain plus that you have, but then you also create combat units. So if you want to, if I'm going to make a knight, I can hire a mercenary, low upfront cost, but really huge upkeep, or I can train one of my followers, which is more expensive, but way lower upkeep.
Right.
In the long run.
Yeah, and you're going to want units in the long run, because if any of those units, sticks around and gets high level, then they can become stewards, which we're going to talk about here in just a little bit. You train these at the special buildings around. Like you don't have to build your barracks or your Thieves Guild or Mage Tower; they just come with your capital.
You can get more of them by capturing certain buildings, but you don't have to.
Right. But you go in and decide what you want to allocate. Like we said, followers are your main bottleneck. Like really the way to speed it up is to go get fame. And fame is most easily gotten by conquest, right?
Conquest and capturing popular statues.
Yes. Wow. Wait, Dave owns that statue? Shit. I need to reevaluate him.
Yeah. I'm really getting into Dave lately.
Man. So let's talk about the stewardship system, because I was surprised at how effective this was.
It's the whole thing like plays into this growth versus expansion kind of mindset, with it. So this is something where it's like you park a guy a high level champion at a training facility. And then he imparts that experience. So any units you make there start at a higher level, which is obviously like really huge, but those high level units are also valuable and can't be the vanguard of your army. You know? So it's interesting. It's a really interesting trade-off system and really important because you do not want to be getting level 1 units
right
late in the game. Like they're basically useless. Something I like that this game does is I really like it in games where levels really matter.
Yes.
And levels really matter in this game.
Yeah.
Like the difference between a level 1 footman and a level 2 footman is huge.
Yeah. Like you very quickly run out of like these little structures and caves you can go into that are level 1 encounters. You know, as you spiral out, those just get bigger. You know, the numbers on those get higher, right? Yeah. So you know, it benefits you to do this. Basically, I just had like a front line and a back line for champions or what have you. So like whenever a champion would come back, you know, like from a battle, I would have like a backup that would go out in their place, and then like the champion that just came back, I would garrison them, you know, to help do the training. And it should be noted that like the benefit accumulates as they're sitting there. So like it will show you like, here's the maximum experience that can be imparted. You need to like have them stay there for several days to actually get that maximum benefit on any unit you train out of it.
Yeah. Yep. It's slow going, but it is a cool system. You also have this long-term upgrade system where you upgrade your stronghold, you upgrade your individual facilities, and this carries with it many benefits. You know, greater resources, higher level units, etc.
No building can be a higher level than your stronghold. And kind of ghoulishly, like any of these upgrades, especially the higher level ones, have a follower cost. So it's built into this system that people are going to die constructing things.
Yeah.
Oops. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll do it for Merlin. All these buildings are insecure. They can be captured by either other lords or marauders. If your stronghold gets taken, you lose all these abilities until you can get it back, which usually can, but it just is, you know, you have to maintain supply lines and maintain a home front as well. You can't just send your whole murder ball up against the enemy and expect to win like you can in a Warcraft.
I like that, murder ball. That's a good term.
That's the what they call in StarCraft or Warcraft the strategy of just sending all of your units.
I'd never heard it called that before, but I know exactly what you mean.
It's accurate. It's very fun. Like I love that in Warcraft. Like there's 8 water elementals get fucked. Like
I can show you which way hell
don't
is.
hold up, but I'm so sad that they don't.
Right.
Like the Warcraft 1 and 2.
Oh well.
So it's Warcraft 3 for me. Magic is its own system because everything is its own system. In this, each faith will start out with a limited number of spells, but to get more spells, you allocate mages to research new ones in the library.
Right. You select one of 4 categories that you want to research. And mages are like a pretty big deal. Like when you play as Order, like mages are champions, you know?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
But the different categories. So you have like attack and defense, and these both are like direct damage and effects, but also buffs and debuffs. You get a lot of mileage out of these.
Yep. Overland, which these increase movement, resource production, change the landscape. These are things you use on the world map. Really, you start off with one that increases your vision radius, which at first seems like nothing, but it's actually very useful.
Yeah.
And then general knowledge. So these are things that, just regular healing spells will show up, but this also allows you to do like intelligence.
Yeah.
To get information about opposing faiths and the resources that they have available.
This takes time, and also it is calculated in person hours. And like as you upgrade your mage tower, the mage library is going to be upgraded as well. You get more seats that you can that you can fill.
6 slaves died to bring us that chair. So you get more seats. Also, your person hours are determined by your level. So if something says it takes 40 days and you put a 5th level mage on there, it's going to take 8 days.
Yeah.
If you put 2 5th level mages on there, it's going to take 4.
Yeah. But like you said earlier, this is quadratic versus linear. So, each of these that you investigate, that you discover is going to increase the utility of your mages, giving them more to do, and conferring other advantages on existing units. So,
yes. Mages get more, all of these units we talked about level up from combat, and mages get more MP, I think, tied to their wisdom stat.
Yeah.
Which is most of their physical stats actually do not grow when they level up, but their wisdom stat goes up.
Yes. Mages can also make you potions for magic crystals. This is a better investment, I think, than healing at the temple.
Direct healing.
Yes.
It just comes along a little bit later.
Yeah.
So after you kind of got your base set up, you want to start expanding. As you head out, you're going to find these neutral structures called villages.
Yeah.
These kind of are owned by the faiths that border them. But when you take them, you claim them as your own, and you can turn them into a training facility.
Yes. Importantly, because these are on borderlands, you can turn it into a training facility of either faith that borders it, which means that this is a way for you as one faith. It's a way for you to train up units and acquire them from another faith without actually going in and capturing or allying with them.
Yes. Yeah. Which is useful.
So this was a way to get flying units as order, because you could just go up, take the village between you and air, and start training those.
Yeah. Yep. The one way to do it. The other way you can do it is through diplomacy, which we'll talk about. You can trade units as well, which is dark.
Yes.
From the starting position in order, you can get to this village, as we mentioned, where you can make fire units and stuff. You're surrounded by these. You can also make guard towers.
Yes.
This allows you to spot enemies through the shroud. I believe this is each faith has a special building. I believe that guard towers are the order's special building.
Yeah. So I don't think that they are functionally different. I think that they just look different.
Well, all the buildings look different.
Yes.
But I maybe I didn't get far enough in my other playthroughs.
Yeah.
But I felt like I did not have the ability to make guard towers when I was playing.
As far as I could tell by looking, all of these kind of had the same function.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. If I'm incorrect and there is like a subtle difference between a guard tower and a mushroom tower, let me know. But yeah. It's a way to set up this structure on the borderland that is just a permanent source of information on coming and going.
There are creeps in the wilderness, as they're known in RTS games. These are known as marauding parties. They're unaligned, and you'll also find them in mysterious places, which are little tiny combat dungeons.
Undiscovered worlds.
Yes, Undiscovered Worlds, Tillman's Crest.
Yep.
So these are sometimes just little combat dungeons that you do to have a place to garrison and get the resources, but also you can capture things like breweries and gold mines in order to give you additional income every turn.
Yeah, it's like getting a free follower that is allocated to making that.
Yes.
Yes. And it's good. Like, you want to prioritize those. And also, like, they change hands quite a bit. I would take one and then I would move on, and then another, an enemy faith would come in and get it from the side. So, it's up to you how much you want to defend it, but it's worth taking that into consideration. These mysterious places end up being multi-level too. So there are like large estates if you're playing order. So you need to clear more than one of those screens. Additionally, the indoor battles get really complicated in strongholds and capitals because there are like walls and bottlenecking and stuff like that.
Yeah. And like places you can climb up, they're like archer perches.
Yeah.
And such. So, yeah. Let's talk diplomacy.
Yeah, because not everything, you don't have to fight for everything.
Yeah. You can be buddies with people. So you can always look at this intelligence report, which kind of, this changes as you encounter enemies and get more intelligence, and gives you a rough idea of military strength and how much they like you. At this point, you're going to start off at the bottom of the hill in terms of military strength,
Right.
Even less so than like water and life. And when you encounter different faiths, you can parlay. They will have a kind of an opening flavor text that describes what they think of you. Hey, we're just exploring. We're looking for more information. We hope you come in peace.
Yeah.
We hate your fucking guts, but give us something and maybe we'll leave.
You killed our lord. You killed our champion, our heir. It's one of the there's some things you can do that you cannot come back from. But even if they are hiding it under a low level hostility, they will still deal with you.
Yeah. And this determines what options you have. This is a slippery slope thing. The more someone does not like you, the fewer options you have.
Yes.
To work with them. So early on, you can trade, you can give gifts, you can request gifts, things like that. And eventually all you can do is like fight and give.
Yeah.
I think. So you can either just plea for mercy or just get into a fight.
I love how many shades there are to this. Like if it was just trade or fight, like that would be functional. But the fact that there is a difference between like plea and request and like trade and demand that kind of like leverage these just kind of like softer stats that you've been building up. And leverage the existing relationship and have like different effects. So like if you demand, like that will increase your fame because you're going around throwing your clout around. If you plea, everybody knows you're going around begging.
Yep. And it doesn't look good.
Yeah. So that reduces your fame.
Yeah. And that is also the way that you trade fame for resources in the capital, which I really like, is just by begging.
Yep.
And it's like, Steve doesn't seem so good. I also really like how this tells you exactly what will happen.
Yes.
So you say, okay, I would like to gift. I'm going to give you this artifact that I can't use and 2 dogs. And you get a little thing that says, if this is accepted, this will greatly improve your relations and bump your level to this.
Yes.
It's not wishy-washy, it really kind of cuts down on the save scumming that would be part of this.
Yeah.
Also, if it's like, I really want to get to empathetic with this group, maybe I need to sweeten the pot a little bit because it's not going to quite get me there.
Yeah. So like this becomes a very good way to manage and also to like maintain relationships. Say if you move in on heir's territory a little bit, without realizing that's what you're doing. And you realize, I've pissed them off and they're not like, they're going to start attacking me. No, I can just go and give them artifacts and then get them back on my side. You can cover up some whoopsies by throwing some sugar their way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can always fight, of course.
Always.
So having a good relationship, means that you can go into their territory, unhindered and you can clear their great temple for them without resistance. And if that happens, they pay tribute to you and they are now yours.
Yeah.
They give you a champion and, as an heir and they're allies now. You get those guys.
Or if you're not on good terms with them, straight up conquest. You go in, you can take their great temple, you can take their capital, and put them under your boot that way.
Yep. And then you get their resources and such. So there is like a level of like a feeling of like kind of widening gyre to this of things, you have to keep a lot of plates spinning eventually, which can be kind of stressful, but there's a big satisfaction, I think, in like slowly taking over this map.
Yeah. Building momentum is such a huge thing. Especially like there's a definite tipping point, like between, either allying with or conquering one other place and then 2. So like you get way more powerful. On the other side of that, though, one thing that like ended up being a little bit of a bummer is that like as your influence gets bigger, turns take longer.
They take forever.
Yeah.
It ends up being like the pacing of this game is so weird because it starts off very slow paced because you're waiting.
You have nothing to do.
So often you have nothing to do. The middle, it hits this really good groove.
Mm-hmm.
And then then turns take forever.
Mm-hmm.
And it just I'm not getting new followers and being able to make these new kind of grand resource related decisions as often as I would like.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. So something to keep in mind that like that momentum is going to build, but then it is going to go away, especially as you get far more capable and you start putting some of the more aggressive faiths on their back heel a little bit.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And one of the ways that you can deal with this is through intrigue. This is a way for you to get a little bit more of a leverage and understand the intel picture a little bit better. And this is all done through thieves. And this is not tutorialized at all within the game, and it is only like vaguely described in the manual. The interface makes it look like you're doing like attacks and stuff, but it's different than that.
Yes. So thieves, you can go into stealth on the world map, which allows you to be invisible.
Mm-hmm.
But thieves can detect thieves. So you can stand still and detect other thieves and set them up as sentries. And these don't have to be champions. You can make a champion thief.
Mm-hmm.
You can also just hire them.
Yeah.
If you stealth into an opposing party's position where they're at on the map, you get 3 special options.
Mm-hmm.
You can spy, which gives you their unit window and updates your intelligence report, so you can learn about them.
Yeah.
You can steal, and you get to choose how risky you want this to be, how many resources you want to take. As far as I could tell, you have a greater chance of failure the greedier you are.
Yeah.
And then subdue, which allows you to like cut off the head. Like
this is
you
fucking
do a death blow on
wild,
the
man.
enemy. This is so crazy. Like it's really neat though.
Yeah.
You assassinate, like you go in, you do a death blow on the leader and attempt to take them prisoner.
Yeah.
And then once you have the prisoner, you get this other set of options to interrogate them or torture them. Both of these affect your reputation.
Yeah.
Not just with that unit, but with other units. So like if you execute them, other faiths are not going to like you.
No, because you're a monster.
Because you did a war crime.
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't get to do war crimes in this. It's not like the real world.
Uh-huh.
If you free them, other faiths might be like, yeah, you know what? They're magnanimous with their, they respect the Geneva Conventions.
Yep.
I like them more.
That's fantasy. I'd be like fantasy Geneva. So like Genevovius, the Accords of Genevovius.
Yes. Yeah. The Wizard Geneva.
Yeah. But yeah, this is wild. Like how much this opens up. Something that, is true about the intelligence report that I really, really like is that like, just as you walk by, enemies, you get like a vague sense. And as you look, you can kind of see there are like 2 different bars on most of the meters. And one of the bars is like, okay, this is, what we know they have. And the other one is like, here's what they possibly could have. There's uncertainty. There's like an information gap there. And that can get honed in as you go and do this other stuff and like lets like, is this a risk worth taking going in after this particular place right now or this particular guy?
Yeah.
Yep.
Really neat. It's one of those things where it's like having this introduced kind of in the mid game when you're going to start doing it did end up feeling to me like kind of like another plate to spin. A
little bit. Yeah.
In a way that was not purely additive, but I respect it.
I can see it being so, like for me, it ended up being a little bit of a novelty. I can definitely see it being, useful in higher difficulty levels, where you really do not want to like waste resources just because you're getting so much fewer of them.
Yeah, absolutely.
So much fewer. That's weird. Yeah.
So once you've done a lot of this, you've taken over some of your neighbors, gotten some allies and gotten rid of fire. It's time to start making inroads on fighting death.
So you can go in here. Any of your expansion is going to put you at odds with them. Like death is just a little bit everywhere, not just in their own little area. Balkoth, he's a flying lord. Like he can just pop up if you encounter him early on. Like you can retreat. It's a little bit like what was it, Doomgaze or whatever in Final Fantasy VI. Like, I'm gonna come back to you later on, buddy. It's fine.
Yep.
Yeah. And you're also gonna find death mages around. These are like necromancers. You want to take these out because this is where the undead armies are coming from.
Yeah, and they're emergencies.
Mm-hmm.
They're no good.
Yeah.
Just in terms of, adding a tiny amount of narrative to this like emergent storytelling, I kept having this specific champion of death who was sniffing around.
Yep.
But was not really doing anything. And every time I talked to him, he would pick a fight and then run away. And that became my mission to get a strong enough and fast enough army with enough spells to kill him before he could run away.
Oh, that's good.
Because he was really fucking obnoxious. But it was real like Jackalope style. Like he just kept showing up and being like, my lord hates you. You are, anathema to me. And then immediately like 23 skidoo. And then try to get away. And I could not catch him because I didn't have, I didn't have like long enough range. So I eventually made parties that were mage heavy that had long range spells specifically to hunt for this lizard riding fuck and take him out. He rode on a little dinosaur and he was a piece of shit.
This little lizard riding fuck.
So,
oh god, video games make good sentences, man.
Yeah, man. Video games make good, lots of stuff. It's great.
Yeah. I never really had too many story interactions like that with death. It was mostly with fire, and like I started expanding a little bit into the chaos area, but by the point that I got there, I had kind of just like outstripped them, and so there really wasn't like an awful lot of like being harried by them like that.
Yeah.
Yep. One thing that you do want to work up to is getting your legendary creature.
Yeah.
And this only happens after you've like basically upgraded everything that there is to upgrade.
Yes. You upgrade your capital and your mage towers fully. You can only have one of these at a time per game. They're very, very powerful.
Yeah.
And these are different for each faith. In a way that is neat. Adds that flavor.
Yeah, it's kind of like summoning a god or something like that.
Yeah, like an avatar.
Yeah.
And this is a good reason to have conquest early on, because the more kind of great temples you have under your control, the greater variety of these guys you can grab. Yes.
But when you said, you can only have one of these, only one of them can be summoned. Like only one instance of them can be summoned. So like, if you were going up against, fire and you kill their, flame drake, their red dragon or whatever, that's never coming back. You cannot summon another one because like that is the one of those that exists in this world.
Yep.
Yeah.
Rip to the flame drake, but I'm different. The win condition for this is defeating Balkoth. So you can do this a couple different ways. I did something very similar to you. I
didn't want to hunt him.
Roaming around. Yeah, he's roaming around like, being a shithead, and you can lure him back by attacking his base, which feels really cool. That's, a cool tactical thing, like marching my armies when I was ready. And there was this real sense of risk to it, because if he had chosen that time, like I basically threw a death ball at him. If he had chosen that time to come attack, he would have fucked me up.
Yes.
If he had chosen that time to send his armies to me, but he didn't. So I had a skirmish outside of his village that was pretty tough, but I was victorious and could lure him back by taking his great temple.
Yeah. Specifically making an inroad into death is pretty, into the death region is really risky, because I feel like the marsh, which is death's special terrain, like, there's more of that around their area than there is special terrain around many of the other kingdoms as it is.
Yeah.
So like your approach is pretty slow, and I felt very paranoid that Balkoth would come in behind me as I was making my approach, and basically give me no way to get out with what basically was all of my lords pretty much as I got there. Taking his capital was nowhere near as hard as taking on Balkoth himself. Actually, I had to take 2 runs at it. Like the first one softened him up, and the second one, dropped the hammer.
Yeah.
Because he's tough. Like he's flying. He throws these scythes at a really long range. And because I played as Order, I never really had, like, I didn't really have like flying units. Basically whatever I could get by, working with air was what I had at this point. And, flying units were immune to that scythe attack.
Yeah. Yeah. It's neat.
Mm-hmm.
It's neat and it's difficult. A fitting challenge for this. Like I like, similar to say your Breath of the Wild or whatever, where the end boss is just there.
Yeah.
And you just get to choose when you're ready.
Mm-hmm.
I really respect that.
Yeah.
I think that's cool. And once you've beaten him, you can become him. You can become Death/Balkoth and try to take over all of Urak.
Yeah. I do like that. How the goal changes, the end game changes. For everybody else, it's kill you. For Balkoth, for Death, it's kill everybody else. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why you get that power bump. And that's, I can imagine that being very satisfying as you continue kind of moving through that. It gets easier and easier, actually. And that being really fun.
Yes.
Like a slow motion gravity gun for the entire game. There is also the expansion, The Legends of Urak. So this gives you a little CGI movie with a tome opening and flipping through its pages, while one of the least professional voice actors in the game, this guy sounds real dorky to me, explains that you're going to step back in time to go through important historical myths and events, and these are little special scenarios with special rules. I poked at all of these but did very little with them.
I only finished one. I finished the fire one because that was the shortest of them. Basically, like, I went and looked at videos and I saw how many turns all of them took. And, like, there are some of these, like the Seeker one, Siegfried, the Hidden Order one. Like, the person that I saw, like, doing a Let's Play of it, they were at, like, basically a year of playing it. They were on day, like, 365.
Yeah. Which that's ridiculous. So the first one, the one I got the furthest in was this first one.
Yeah.
With Merlin. Merlin comes to the kingdom of Logris to unite them, and he helped Arthur rise to the throne. But to do that, you had to clear the way of the Pretender Prince of Vortigern. So
so you play as
Merlin, baby.
You play as Merlin. He's kind of your main dude here, your avatar at the start. And first you have to put Arthur on the throne, but then you're going to be going around to like these different estates throughout the kingdom. The rules for amassing fame are different because you are not the ruler of this. That's the case for most of these. You cannot upgrade your stronghold until a certain point in the story. Like Arthur has to marry Guinevere. And then like there is, actually being able to finish this, you have to amass an army of paladins who raise their wisdom high enough for you to pass these grail tests to get the grail that you need to take on Mordred.
Yep. Yeah. Or you mean Vortigern?
No, you take out Vortigern very early on. Mordred is
shows up later. At first, it seemed like it was they're just like our guy is called. Our Mordred is called Vortigern. But yeah, you're right. So, and the way you defeat Vortigern is by empowering a white dragon to defeat his red dragon. So big Arthurian dragons smashing against each other. Arthur can then draw the sword from the stone, which he uses as an artifact. I really like that the stone is actually available right away.
It's just there.
Like I clicked on it as Merlin, and he's like, I can't do it. I'm like, shit, that would have been easy.
Yeah.
Merlin seems pretty worthy.
Yeah. Yeah, but this ends up being a pretty long campaign because like after you get Arthur on the throne, you start this expansion going to these different estates. Like you're doing like little quests and clearing out these castles to expand the kingdom. And eventually like you have to go and get the Holy Grail and the spear before making an advance into the Death region. Yeah, it's big and involved.
Yeah. And then the second one, the fire one, is Crispin. A tale of the fire people battling against an icy foe. This famed fire giant mage Crispin was of limited means and used her resources to shrewdly gain followers. Yeah.
And kind of the crisis here. So you're in the Fire Kingdom. The lava has stopped flowing. which is important for them. I don't know if it's their food or what. And the Great Temple has frozen over, so you need to like go and basically, it says gather lords, but what you're doing is like doing a little solo adventure. Like you cannot really recruit anyone. You just have to take out towns, and eventually you'll get followers by doing that. And you're marching north until you fight this frost dragon. That is the source of all this. This is kind of like playing a low level like Baldur's Gate campaign or something like that. It's an awful lot of like clearing out caves on your way.
Yeah. There's elements of this in Warcraft.
Yeah.
Like in Warcraft 2 or in StarCraft, where they have the little dungeon, or the Warcraft 3 RPG campaign prequel.
Yeah.
Kind of thing that this, kind of reminds me of a little bit.
Yeah.
Bio Baggins, the halflings lived a simple life, no kingdom or military, but one day Bio was called forth to rid a nearby hall of a monster named Grundle. The Grundle myth.
So you think it's going to be Lord of the Rings? No, this is Beowulf.
Yep.
Yeah. So like you start out in this hobbit village. There's no, military buildings. Eventually, like as this goes on, you end up using order villages to hire your mercenaries. But like you're playing as this halfling Beowulf. And you have to, first do a battle against one Grendel in this hall that is, right nearby. But after that's cleared, no, the story doesn't end. You have to take the fight into the swamp where you fight multiples of them. They're like 5
Crisis on
Grendels.
Infinite Grendels. And it ends with you venturing east into the lands of men to deal with the greedy king Hermod. And this turns into kind of a choose your own adventure.
Yeah.
As you meet with these individual towns, you actually get little interfaces where you choose how you treat with them.
Yeah.
Oh.
So it's like the Beowulf expanded universe.
Yes. Yeah, the BCU. Zephyr is the final one that presents you. There's a hidden one. This is the evil one. This is the Dark Elf tale, a necromancer who sought to unleash the power of the Lich and enslave the Light Elves. All that sounds good to me. And it opens with this legend about how the people of Golgoth know that life is a temporary imprisoning of the soul. They're like the dustmen or what have you.
Yes. This kind of has the fewest restrictions of these. Like you are not a lord, but you can hire mercenaries and raise the dead. Like that's the primary way that you're going to mount an army. And your undead, cannot be healed by resting. You have to heal by exchanging crystals at the temple. With all of that in mind, this looks like a lot of fun to me because it's really straightforward. And the gimmick is you're rolling deep with skeletons. And you're rolling deep with these death mages and stuff. So you have these gigantic battles. And it's like it's like just you, the life faction, and maybe like one or two others that are meant to be crushed as you go. And you can tell they had a lot of fun with the writing in this because everything is just deliciously evil. Like everything is from the perspective of this very arrogant necromancer who, talks about the joys of death.
Yeah. Which is my favorite kind of necromancer.
Yeah.
There's a hidden one. This is really ballsy to me to put a hidden campaign that's really big.
It's so big.
In your expansion.
Yeah.
Which is if you click the empty space in the middle of the Stonehenge, you get Siegfried's campaign.
Yeah. And this is an extremely long campaign, and it is a retelling of. I always mispronounce this. It's the ring cycle. It's Nibelungenlied. Nibelungenlied. Yeah, you know what I mean. Yeah, Siegfried and Brunhilde and all of that.
Yep. So you start off, out in the wilderness. You have no army and no kingdom, but you live without fear. A voice calls to you. A small creature aligned with Earth needs help, so you travel to meet them. So your special rules are you begin far away from your kingdom, and your appearance will change during the module. If your mentor dies before you finish your education, the quest ends.
Right.
So you train with this little gnome. Yeah,
you train with your gnome. You recover the shards of your legendary sword. And when you take it, back to your kingdom, you like, this is when the second part of this starts. You need to be strong enough to reforge it. And you have to go around and do a bunch of battles to get, to get to the level where it needs to happen. And this starts the second motion here, the second movement, where you have to go and take out the fire-aligned dwarves of the Nibelung, and eventually defeat Woden and align with Brunhilde, who kind of like joins you as like basically a paladin almost. And then everything ends with you marshaling your forces and taking out Attila the Hun. So like it is just straight up a retelling of the Ring Cycle, which is fucking crazy to me.
Yes, it's a pretty wild thing to include in Lords of Magic: Legends of Urak special edition. To me, there's a video game adaptations of the Ring Cycle.
Yeah,
and that's Lords of Magic. It is. I feel like this episode kind of gives you the pieces.
Yeah,
like this is what these are what the disparate pieces of playing the game look like. It doesn't really express what the feeling of playing the game, which is this widening gyre of awareness and concerns as you do capture that feeling of starting with this very small party and ultimately becoming this incredibly powerful super lord.
Yes.
That is really appealing. It's just, there's a big cost to it. Like it takes a big chunk of time, a big investment. In terms of like amount of time I spent on this compared to how much time it takes to complete a run or the episode length, this is a very unfavorable ratio. I spent a lot of time on this in order to not get very much episode or very many games under my belt, really.
Yes. I feel ridiculous that we are at the end here and this episode is shorter than the Plants vs. Zombies episode.
That's
fucking wild to me.
This is 20 times as complicated as Plants vs. Zombies.
And like putting these notes together took a chunk out of me, and that sounds a little bit like I'm being like, oh, poor me or whatever. I want people to understand that like this is a game that really does live in the systems and the interactions with them and in the playing, right? And it's a good feeling bringing order to that chaos. You talked about that on Twitter. I saw you mention that, and like that is the thing that is appealing to me about your 4X games, about your civilizations and your Stellaruses and what have you. Is the sense that you are bringing things, you are aligning disparate elements into things that will help you accomplish your goal in the game.
It is fun and satisfying to conquer a map. Like strip all 2020 colonialist things from that. Please don't take that out of context and just like make it your ringtone and send it to Rock Paper Shotgun to get me canceled.
Right.
But it is fun. Like it is satisfying, and that's something that I like in tactics games as well. We talked about during our last live show, we talked about Fallout Tactics. And that is a micro version of that. Like I start at one end of the map with a small group of people and I clear it. And that is really satisfying, methodical work. This is that on a much longer span of time, and a deeper, kind of richer version of that, which I have to be in this incredible narrow bandwidth of mood for.
And this feels unique to me in terms of a bunch of other stuff, because like in terms of games that are like, similar to this or like play with similar ideas, like if you're playing Age of Mythology, you're kind of always going to be Greece or Egypt. And this though, like any campaign is going to have you needing to be conversant in the advantages and disadvantages of any given faith and their units, right? So like you're eventually going to be rolling around with an army that is made up of half of the peoples of the world, right? And there's a tremendous satisfaction even in the mild amount of, let's call it mastery, but that's a little bit too generous to me. But just the feeling of understanding that you get when you understand that like as order, getting in good with air is a huge advantage for you, right? And it's a game that is meant to have like multiple run-ups, and something that like, I don't know that I'm necessarily proud of this, but I don't want anybody to feel like ashamed if they do this too. This is also from an era of games that had cheats in them, basically like little command codes or whatever. Like for my, after my first couple of very unsuccessful runs where I was like, oh, I'm not actually getting a chance to do enough of this to learn because the resources are so stingy. Like, I gave myself like a little early boon so I could get to experience these systems outside of the tutorials. I gave myself the additional, movement capacity so I could just understand what the surrounding map was a little bit more before I went and did like a legit playthrough with no cheats. Because, it is so hostile early on that it is not going to give you a chance to meet it on its terms.
Yes. Yeah. And don't feel ashamed of that.
Yeah.
Like, I just recently wrapped up my playthrough of Bloodline as well. And there's certain games that like, I don't want anyone to play them without console commands really.
Right.
And this is one of them as well. Like giving your scout 1,000 movement points gives you a big advantage, but it does it on like an elemental level where the game just ends up feeling friendlier.
Yeah.
Like there was almost like there's a version of this that exists that is a little bit easier, that has a less harsh fog of war that you can compensate and kind of make it closer to what you want by doing that.
Yeah.
And I respect it. I think I like it when games give me that option. Cool game. Interesting game.
I had no idea it existed before David requested it.
I had always known about it, but never actually dove in.
No.
So thank you, David.
Yeah. And it has me curious about other games that are, similar to this, or have a little bit of that same kind of grand kind of scope to them.
Yeah. If you have things to say about Lords of Magic Special Edition, hit us up at duckfeed.tv/contact. You can also do that if you have things to say about Plants vs. Zombies or our premium episode this month, God of War 2018.
Yes. Like you said, September the 15th, October the 15th is the deadline for our October games. That is our spooky game month. It is the most wonderful time of the year outside of Nyarlathotep. But those games are going to be Dino Crisis 2, Soma, Resident Evil 5, and then our premium episode for that month, which is Doom 3.
Yes. Yeah. Premium episodes are episodes you get if you are a patron. We release the generalities for everyone, but at $5, you get the full episode. You also get all of the old episodes, and bonus shows and a bunch of bonus content at the $5 and $10 kind of breakpoints. It is okay if you patronize us and then have to go. We understand we're living through a global pandemic.
Yeah.
So it is, it's not great, but we really appreciate people who are able to support us during this time.
Yeah. So that's a patreon.com/duckfeed.tv if you would like to. This is, I believe, the first episode we are recording after we announced that we're going to be rolling up a new show here in the fall. So everybody get excited. Look out for Orb. That's not what it's called. It's not Watch Out for Fireballs and Look Out for Orb. Orb is the name of our Venture Brothers podcast that we're going to be doing.
Yeah. We are finalizing music and art for this. We are doing research and such. I just got my big hardcover copy of the guidebook.
That is such a good book. It's such a beautiful product. Yeah.
It's a beautiful product. I wish I had more time to read it right now as opposed to packing
moving
and getting ready to move.
Yeah.
Which is always an emergency. But we're getting that stuff. I'm really looking forward to starting that because I want to start my my revisit. If you want to talk about that show with us, you can do so in the Slack. We got a Slack channel set up for it, which is also through the Patreon.
Yeah.
Ratings and reviews are also really appreciated. Once we start Orb, we want you to come out and force with those things. That helps us out when a new show is happening. And more than anything, stay safe and don't get sick.
Please, for the love of God. Yeah,
absolutely.
I think so. I think we're done. Yeah. So until next time, watch out for fire. The faith. They're going to wreck you.
I know what you.
Okay, cool. That's